administrator. He is also a member of the Indian Society for the History of Mathematics. One of his greatest works is Your Year in Books, the good, the bad, the long and the short. It's all in at one place in his book. In conversation with him, we have Mr. Varun S Bhatta, an assistant professor of philosophy at IISER Bhopal. Varun's research at present is situated in metaphysics and philosophy of science. Varun is also the co-founder of Indian Philosophy Network, a collective that aims to bring together philosophers in India. I would hereby hand over the floor to the honorable gentleman.
Very good afternoon to everyone present here. Respected Dani Sahab also. He is a mathematician and I learned many things from him. Today, my topic is geometry, how it is developed, how it is present everywhere, and how the formulas are derived. So we are making a session in a different way. A slide will be shown here, and sir may ask any question from here. Next slide. Geometry was developed 3000 BC in India by Rigved time or the Indus Valley civilization. In other civilization also, there are six important civilization: India, China, Egypt, Arab, and Mesopotamia, which we call Babylon also. So they all developed geometry, and the reason was that it was their social need. In India, it was religious need, and others also. So geometry in every culture is developed in a different way, and the formulas are also derived. Euclid, Thales, Pythagoras, Bhaskaracharya, they all developed the geometry. Result is same, but needs were different. Next.
Professor Bandi?
Yeah, this is Indus Valley civilization photo.
Shall we go back to the previous slide?
You may ask
anything. I think that it is a very important set of points that you are mentioning here. And probably we can spend like few minutes here thinking about and
no doubt. You may ask any question.
So one of the things, look at the important things that you are mentioning here, that geometry developed throughout in different regions, in different places, different cultures. If you see, say you mentioned that in 3rd century BC, Euclid developed, Euclid's Elements book was one of the founding books, treatises of geometry. Yes. And the way he develops it is that as you mentioned, an axiomatic form.
Axiomatic form and derivative.
Probably it will be useful for here to distinguish how it was conceived in India differently. Was it conceived in an axiomatic form?
Eclectic geometry was brought into India by Arabians in the 8th century also. Euclid element. When in Takshila University, Arabian and Chinese students used to study it, and so the Euclid elements, they are known as Euclid elements.
Correct.
They were brought to India and they were incorporated in Indian mathematics also.
But there was geometrical formulations much before 8th century, right?
Yes.
In India. And how it was developed? Was it developed in the axiomatic form?
No, not axiomatic form, because that record is not available. It was only their need, land survey, monuments, built up monuments, temples, and their other needs. Particularly in Jaina and Vedic culture, they want their religious performance by doing Havan, Vedi banana, so they need the geometry. But no such theorem, later on it was available in the time of Bhaskara, others also, but accurate axiomatic or theorems is not available.
And is that important, do you think? As a mathematician, do you think putting mathematics in axiomatic form?
Yes, it is easy to explain to the new student who comes in the 6th, 7th class that when two lines intersect, the opposite angles are equal.
Yeah. No, you're speaking like a true teacher, because you're saying that the mathematics has to be axiomatic because it is easy to teach like that. Yes. But would a mathematician derive and think in axiomatic form? Because in the the ancient Indian times, whatever we call India right now, in the ancient times of that, one of the principal books of it was Sulabha Sutras. And that didn't have any axiomatic form. But most of the historians of mathematics call that has to be the counterpart of the Greek geometry.
Yes.
So can you tell, I mean, like, what is the
Because
nature
there was
of
a route,
geometry found in-
trans-Asiatic route, from India to, through trans-Asiatic route, business was performed. And at the same time, a scholar from one place to other place migrated, and we learned these things. And one interesting thing I want to know, I want to say you, that earlier there was no name of mathematics. It was a part of Nakshatra Vigyan, because in India, astronomy was given much importance. और आज भी अगर आप किसी बाजार में जाएं, आप किसी गांव में, तो जो ज्योतिष होता है वो अपने आगे गणिताचार्य भी लिखता है. You find about Ganitacharya, because mathematics was in early 5,000 years back. Astronomy was much important because they want to know the auspicious time for their religious performance. So astronomy and study of astronomy, astrology and other branches also, they were more important than this calculation or theorems of geometry.
Yeah, and that is what is interesting, because in the Indian context, the way geometry developed was in the making of the pyre, right? The fire.
Vedi.
Yeah.
Vedi.
Like,
They called Vedi.
So the idea was that in the Indian Sulabha Sutras, and that is what I mean, I want to ask your opinion on this. Like, let us take the name of the discipline geometry.
Discipline?
The name of the subject called geometry. And it comes from measuring the earth. Geometry.
Geo. This is not Indian name. Indian
It's
name
correct.
is Kshetra Ganit or Rekha Ganit.
No, that is a very later name.
Uh-huh.
What is interesting is that Sulabha Sutra, in which we find the ancient geometrical structures and formulations in the Indian tradition, Sulabha Sutra comes from the meaning of Sulabha is the sacred cord, measurement cord. And what is interesting is that they were using this cord to measure the funeral pyre or whatever, the Vedic Homa pyre and all of that, to make up the kunda, like the fire kunda for that. And what is interesting is that in all formulations of the Vedic rituals, this sacred cord was used to measure things.
Yes.
So the measuring of something seems to be central to geometry. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I agree. In Jaina also, there was a sir, in the morning told, there is a term Raju, R-A-J-J-U, Raju, in Jaina tradition and Hindu tradition also, because measurement was necessary. And later on we will see here in the next slide that in Hindu Sanatan religion, it is mentioned that if it is not accurate, it will not give a prosperous result. Whatever you want, it should be accurate and in proper way. So we take next slide.
Yeah.
Next slide. This is the excavation of the Indus Valley civilization. These monuments, old monuments, they reflect that the geometry was properly used in proper proportion also. So it indicates that 5,000 years back, Indians were knowing geometry and they were using it also. Next slide.
Can we go back to the previous slide? Because
Okay.
let's spend some time on this.
Okay.
You mentioned that like the construction of these monuments used geometrical aspects.
Yes.
In what sense?
In sense, you see the circulation or rectangles, different, because I am a mathematician, I see the geometrical figures also. You may see that it is only bricks. But you
those
see
are-
the accuracy, because it is dismantle and it is excavation, so it may not be accurate, but the design, the size, the proportionality, the shape of rectangle, you see that 90-degree angle is also reflected here. So we can say that they were knowing all these things and they were using it.
I mean, do you think then making a pole stand straight would be to do geometry?
And they may not be knowing exact formula, but they learn it through tradition. As we see a mistri comes to our house, he wants a perpendicular, then he use some instrument. He may not be knowing that perpendicular means 90-degree angles. So geometry was used through tradition.
And also this is a very interesting point to discuss about archaeoastronomy. What is interesting in most of the ancient monuments is that they were building the monuments in order to suit the astronomical aspects of things. Like say for example, you would see that so many temples, gopuras are built in such a way that on the solstice days or the equinox days, sun comes on a particular point at a particular point, or you will see the shadow at a particular point. And that is what is interesting, which connects, I think, and that's why I thought it's an important slide, connects archaeology, astronomy and geometry.
Both three things were most important astronomical aspect because they were very much conscious of time, nakshatra, surya, they were all related to religion, to give them a respect, mark of respect. Nakshatra. Construction of a city in the Indus Valley civilization, it is of 2500 BC also. So definitely, as a mathematician, I can say that geometry was properly used in necropolis of Mohenjo-daro in Indus, the largest excavation in Indus Valley civilization. Next slide. You may ask question, sir. This is a pond near Gujarat, Lothal, where the proportion is 1:6 or 6:1. So they were knowing exact proportion also. They use it. Next slide. In ways I already told you that for different cause, geometry was differently used by different culture. In Egypt, they were constructing pyramids. So they need the knowledge of pyramid, dimension of pyramid, square base, calculation of square base area. In India, we need ponds and other things. So there were different needs for different civilization. So they developed geometry. Next slide.
Professor Bandi, shall we go back to the previous slide a bit?
Okay.
Yeah. I hope you don't mind me sitting here.
No, it doesn't make any difference.
So you mentioned that geometry was different in different cultures.
Yes. Use of geometry.
Oh, no, that is different. That is what I wanted to ask you about. Use of geometry is very different from development of geometry. And that is what we have to be now
clear.
Have a conversation about, because development of geometry, see, the thing is everyone, like a child draws a triangle or a circle or something. We can't say the child is doing geometry. What the geometry or the discipline of mathematics tries to understand these shapes and the nature and characteristics of the shapes.
Okay.
Now, understanding and theorizing the shapes, whatever shapes that we are seeing, is very different from doing it. So the use of geometry is very different from development of geometry as a discipline.
Okay, I agree.
Right, and that is why I thought let me clarify that so that you can get my next question. If every human civilization uses these shapes, everything comes in a specific shape, one form or the other. That doesn't mean that everyone is doing geometry. If an artist, just because they are doing painting in one form or the other, doesn't mean that they are doing geometry. They are using geometrical figures.
Yes.
We can say that. If that is the case, what becomes interesting is that is there geometry which is different for different cultures? Not the use of geometry.
Today's concern is geometry is same for everywhere, right angle property, square, pyramid, whatever may be. But in early time, there may be proportion may be different. They may be heavy special type of triangles or squares. We may not be knowing because there were no interconnection between 3000 BC. So there were different geometry. But there were no axioms or no theorems for geometry.
And that, I think, is a very important insight to understand here. And I want to know your opinion on that, Professor Bandi. Is that's why I pointed out to Euclid's example that you mentioned.
Yes.
The way Euclid develops his geometry is in a very axiomatic form. One of the first definitions he starts with is straight line is a breathless line. Imagine, have you ever seen a line which is breathless?
Thank you, sir.
Actually, Professor Bandi, you can come here. The slides have come.
No, I'm better here.
Yeah. Actually, we can see each other now.
थोड़ा slides 35 है इसलिए मैं चाहूँगा थोड़ा जल्दी चलाएं अपन.
Yeah. I mean, I was just thinking that if we can clarify this, Euclid's formulation of geometry was very abstract. In fact, in Greek mathematics, one of the deep struggle was how to. Sorry, what? I like how we are reorienting to the camera now. Am I good now?
Yes, sir. Continue.
So, geometry in Euclid's and the Greek geometry mathematics was very abstract. The idea was, and one of the struggles for Greek philosophers and mathematics was that how to go away from the gross material reality that we have to abstract reality. For them, and it is very important for them to do it because for Greeks, what was real was not what we see around these things.
Yes.
What was real is what is unseen.
Very good.
The unseen circle which is breathless, the unseen line which is breathless.
Okay.
That, and what we draw on the paper is not the real circle or triangle or line for them, the Greek. It is a reduced form of reality for Greek philosophers and mathematicians. Contrast to that, in Indian culture, the geometry developed was not in this abstract way at
No,
all.
I agree. But when from 3rd century or 4th century, when Aryabhat came in the picture, or Bhaskara first, Varahami, Brahmagupta, they convert it into, because there
True.
was a astronomical unit.
Yeah. Continue.
So then they develop it in axiomatic and derivation forms. I will show you.
Yeah, please, you can continue. Yeah.
Next slide. So this is Bakshali Lipi. This is Bhojpatra जिसको बोलते हैं, brick block पे लिखी हुई है. It was discovered in 1881 in a Bakshali village near Peshawar, which was part of undivided India. This contains lot of mathematics, and it is written in the Sharda Lipi. Zero is also mentioned in this book, and it is mentioned also that this book must be older than the mathematics of Greeks and Arab. It is still reserved in India, Bakshali Lipi. Next. Most important thing is that geometry is actually developed through nature. See the beauty of nature, the symmetry, the reflection everywhere. So when we teach in school or college, the similarity between two triangles, or mirror symmetry, or rotational symmetry, so geometrical shapes and symmetry, they have been derived from the nature.
Yeah. Professor Bandi, one question to you now. When you mentioned that like geometry is about this shapes, nature and all of that, looks like all of this we perceive through our eyes, right? Do you think geometry is visual? Which means
this is visual?
Which means we have geometry in the first place just because we have eyes.
Yes.
Do you think another living being, which is as intelligent as us, probably which doesn't have eyes, would do geometry?
Yeah, they maybe have some certain intuition. In my college, once we kept competition for blind students, so they have to make a statue of mother. So you will surprised to know that they all made the perfect statue of a mother. They have never seen, they were blind from birth. So we called 30 students in my college. My college is very big. So they were given, unko matti de di gayi, and they made it. So intuition is there. So it may be intuition in the animals, birds also. So they can find all these things. Next.
We'll talk about it.
You see this figure. This is important. अब देखिए जो मधुमक्खी छत्ता बनाती है उसका हेक्सागोनल में कहीं गैप तक नहीं है. अगर ह्यूमन बनाए, मैं भी बनाऊं ब्लैक बोर्ड पे, तो कहीं इतना परफेक्ट नहीं बना सकता है ना. सिमिलरली अर्थ के बारे में पता लगा कि ये स्फीराइड स्फीयर नहीं है. तो दीज ऑल थिंग्स वी लर्न थ्रू एंड वी गेव द नेम ऑफ थ्रू ज्योमेट्री ऑल्सो. नेक्स्ट. You see the sky, rainbow. We share the shape of hyperbola. We gave the name of hyperbola. You see the symmetry, reflection symmetry in the butterfly and in other animals, birds also. So nature has gifted us with beauties and geometry also. Because I am a mathematician, I will say geometry also.
Yeah. Actually, you mentioned symmetry, right?
Yes.
The notion of symmetry also has a very deep history.
Yes.
The symmetry as what we are trying to call as mirrors, the shape of the butterfly that is put there is a mirror symmetry that develops only in 5th century in the Greece era.
Actually, Greek contribution is great. Yeah. Earlier, Indian contribution was great, but from 3rd, 4th century, India was attacked by foreign rulers also. So our libraries and research work were totally destroyed. It again came into the picture after 10th or 12th century. This was the reason.
The symmetry played any important role in the Indian...
Yes, symmetry also played the role.
I mean, in the development of geometry.
Actually, we can compare Now even the modern mathematics, I teach topology, we find the symmetry, connectedness, we can apply all these things.
Yeah, we'll
Next.
continue further.
You see the starfish, 5-way symmetry. You see a sunflower. The accurate symmetry, you draw the line. You'll find there is nothing difference of a angle also. So nature has gifted us for this. Next.
But what it says about geometry, sunflower,
Huh?
what it says about geometry.
Geometry, I want to show that even every leaves of that flower are symmetrical. Center line is symmetrical. I've drawn all these three lines. So this shows that the nature is perfect. We, the human being, are not perfect, but the nature is perfect.
No, that is a very important point. Are you saying nature is geometrical?
Everywhere you see the star, sun, moon, sea, rivers, everywhere. Next. You see the shape of triangles, how triangles are obtained. हम घर में एक दीपक लगाते हैं उसकी लो बिल्कुल isosceles triangle बन जाती. So the shape of the triangles in a very ancient book I found this figure and copied it. So there are these 4 types of triangles that we obtain from the nature. One is of air, one is of water, one is of earth, one is of the fire. So this is also the shape of the triangles. First time when triangle was made, it must be from certain figure. ऐसे सपना तो नहीं आया होगा कि भैया एक ट्रायंगल बनाते हैं. Next. This is the main Thale. He developed all these theorems. So sir was telling here. So this is in the proof form, geometrical in the axiomatic form, such like if a circle divided by diameter makes it into 2 parts, opposite angles are equal. So in the 6th century BC, Thale started the axiomatic forms.
And that was a very different form of doing geometry, right?
Yes.
And what was happening during the same time in the Sulabha Sutras thing?
Sulabha Sutra is older than this.
Older than this, right?
Yes.
How were the calculations done?
With India, there was one thing also which was a hurdle, that our language was totally different, either Sanskrit or Prakrit. So other countries cannot be understood, so no importance was given to us by deriving all these things. In the Sulabha Sutra, derivation is given. Sir, may pani de?
Yeah, please.
Next. This is the Pythagoras theorem which we teach in the school also. A square plus b square is equal to c square. The credit is given to Pythagoras, but before the Pythagoras, it was known to Indian Bodhayan used Sulabha Sutra.
What was known?
The derivation, I will show you here. So Pythagoras was given importance because he was from Greek, because Greek contribution is also very important here. So they derived this theorem, but it was known to Indians, even Chinese also earlier.
That the hypotenuse, square of the hypotenuse
is equal to
sum of the squares, right?
Square, yes.
Now,
and it was used in Rig Veda, when Vedi was constructed, the right angle property was used. But I have shown here, sir.
Correct. Now, what is important, and that is what I was trying to point out in the earlier conversation, is that what was known was very different. Like, say, what they were doing is that if I take a sacred...
Okay, I understand your question.
Yeah.
Known is a different thing, and mention or bring into the notice of all these things is a different thing. So I told that the language was a big problem. And further, there, even you read the Prakrit language, there are different type of Prakrit also. Marathi Prakrit is, Sorseni hai. So there were different language. Language was very big hurdles for us also.
Okay.
Next.
We will come to that, yeah.
This is the father of the geometry, Euclid. He was brought to the University of Alexandria by Ptolemy, and he wrote many books for geometry and derived, and as he told, he gave the proof of also axiomatic form. So systematic geometry was developed in Egypt by father of the geometry, Euclid, and we say Euclid elements. And even in 8th class or 9th class or 6th class, we teach all these things. Next.
Now, talking about
This
teaching...
is Euclid. theorems part. What, sir?
No, talking about teaching,
Huh.
have you ever, since you are a veteran teacher, and have you ever tried introducing ancient Indian geometry?
No, nowadays the syllabus is changed and government of India has realized this history of mathematics should also be taught to the student. So in the first year, from Aryabhat to Varahamir, Brahmagupta, all are touching and their contribution is also mentioned.
Yeah, and that is why I think it's very important to revisit these questions in the education context, is because
Wind up.
the geometry and the way it was being used in India was by exercises. Like say,
Okay.
take a thread, take
ठीक
it
है.
into different forms.
Sir, we are short of time, so we only show the pictures.
Okay.
So next 5 minutes में खत्म कर दे. Quickly 5 minutes में. You see the
Running
geometry.
quite weird, so I'm extremely sorry for that.
The geometry used in the buildings, monuments by Islamic Golden Age in the 9th century, and that were also brought up to India also, because by that time some Mughals were come here. Next slide. We will finish her in 5 minutes. Next. This was Chinese, they were using right angle theorem. Next. Indian geometry in Vedic culture, they were, as I told, they were using Sulva Sutra. There are 9 or 12 Sulva Sutra in which Bodhayan and other are very important. Next. So this is where I was saying you, Tetri Samhita of Yajurved. It is mentioned the property of right angle in the use of Vedi, Mahavedi, Vedi also. Next. इवन हमारे यहाँ जो श्री यंत्र बनाते हैं उसमें सारे ट्रायंगल्स यूज करते हैं तो दे रिप्रेजेंट समथिंग जैसे अपर वाला हो तो उसको हम अग्नि या शिव बोलते हैं और नीचे वाला हो तो शक्ति दैट इज यूज्ड नेक्स्ट 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 द नंबर ऑफ ट्रायंगल्स आर यूज्ड इट इज मेंशन इन द रुद्रमाला तंत्र आल्सो नेक्स्ट सो दिस इज श्री यंत्र इट इज़ मेंशन कि अगर लाइन गलत है तो आपको रिजल्ट नहीं मिलेगा गलत हो सकता है तो ऑस्पिशियस रिजल्ट इज ऑब्टेन्ड ओनली इट इज एक्यूरेट नेक्स्ट दिस इज मंडल यू लेडीज में बी नोइंग ऑन एवरी ऑस्पिशियस फंक्शन वी ड्रॉ सम ज्योमेट्रिकल figure even in temples even in religious places and they are said to be give some positive results next this is as he was asking you Bhaskara Bijganit have given the proof in the sloka a square plus b square equal to c square. Next. This is proof. Next. ये ट्राइंगल ये भी प्रूफ है ये सब श्लोक में दिए हैं. नेक्स्ट नेक्स्ट ये बौद्धायन ये सब दे वेर स्कूल्स दे वेर नोन एज स्कूल्स ऑल्सो बौद्धायन स्कूल. अरबुनी पर्शियन मैथमेटिशियन ट्रेवल मेड एन अटेम्प्ट टू इंट्रोड्यूस अल्बुरिनी ने यूक्लिड एलिमेंट्स इंडिया में इंट्रोड्यूस करवाए. नेक्स्ट दिस इज ज्योमेट्री इन जैना कल्चर विच सर अर्लियर डिस्कस अस. नेक्स्ट दिस इज ऑल इन सूर्य प्रगृति. नेक्स्ट modern geometry topology and other things we are using here. So we from 17th century it is the shape of the geometry change. Next application is its application is in cryptography, crystallology, modern number theory and in other geometries used. I am very much thankful to everyone. Sorry we are delayed. Any question?
Well, yes, I thought, when we were talking about our ancient Indian culture and you talked about astronomy, yes, maybe they do. We did not write down that it's called geometry or something like that. But the fact that even the radius of the sun, the distance between the earth and the sun, the earth and the moon, that till today is absolutely right to 1/1,000,000th of a second. I mean, just a little apart. But that would not have been possible if the ancient sages did not know, by whatever name you may call it, geometry or whatever name you may call it, but they all had it.
अभी
And secondly,
मैडम के एक प्रश्न पे से आपको बताता हूँ. हमारे इक्लिप्स होता है ना.
हाँ.
अभी तो मॉडर्न इक्विपमेंट से
हाँ.
बट 5000 साल पहले भी एक्यूरेट टाइम बता देते थे.
बिल्कुल सही.
इवन लॉर्ड श्री कृष्ण इन द बैटल ऑफ महाभारत he was knowing कि there will be a solar eclipse.
So,
So we
may
were
not
very
say
much
that.
enriched.
Then also when you said that in 7th century it came to India, in fact, according
No,
to
it was
all of
in a
them,
systematic way because we were under invasion. So we were ruled by
no,
Mughals and then
their
Britishers.
invasion started only 900 and something. But in 6th, 7th century, Khwaja somebody, I'm forgetting the name, something with H, had come, and there was a lot of pothis and knowledge that he gathered over here, took it, got it translated, did it in Arabic, and from there traveled westwards. And these are all in public domain.
And the Takshila library was burned for 6 months. It was burning continuously. So our knowledge were totally destroyed. It was only through Shrut Vigyan. Thank you again. Thank you very much to the organizer for giving me this nice opportunity. And you listened to me. So I am really thankful to you.
Thanks a lot, sir, for this insightful session. Now, नहीं sir, बहुत informative session था आपका. Now, may I please call upon Meenakshi Dua ma'am to please come forward and felicitate the author and discussant with a memento as a symbol of love, respect and gratitude. Sir. The memento, ladies and gentlemen, is the mascot of Bhopal Literature and Art Festival. It is a picture of an endangered bird.